This is the Chasing Tomorrow podcast with Joe Gagnon. We bring you captivating conversations that will inspire all of us to go after our own version of a high-performance life. Welcome to the Chasing Tomorrow podcast, hanging out with my best buddy here, Sean. Of course, what else? Always Sean always comes with a smile. And actually, he recently ran the LA Marathon. He's been amping up his mileage. He's trying to intimidate me, getting ready for our challenge here in Joshua Tree in 10 days. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder if I can keep up with this guy. But I think that the thing, as I was thinking about this conversation, Sean, is a little bit of you always feel underprepared, but you're always sort of ready for an adventure. And then you got to sort of just get there and start because you don't really know what's going to happen until you get there. Because for all of what we know in training, the only thing I always bring confidence is after doing this for 90 different times, I feel like, okay, I'll probably be able to survive whatever happens, even if life is taking over and you're not getting all the training you want. Got a foundation. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to this discussion. It's always fun to hang out. I think you're hanging out now in San Diego, maybe? I don't know where you are anymore.
Yeah, we're in San Clemente, which
Ah,
I feel a little spoiled because a lot of our training is in 60 degrees and blue skies, and makes it easy to get out there.
today I'm in Boston, and yeah, I always end up seeming like I'm wearing the exact same clothes. I actually do have more clothes than this outfit here. But anyway, I got to run. It was 27 degrees. The winds were 20 miles an hour, and it was spitting rain. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. I didn't have 60 degrees and nice sunny
You
skies.
know,
But yeah, hey, I'm getting ready.
it's gonna get your mind ready for this adventure. And you're talking about never being ready and always being ready, and there is always an excuse for not doing something. I just came off of training for High Rocks, and personally I wanted to focus on nutrition, adding some muscle, and then we're like, hey, what do we think about this 80-mile run across Joshua Tree and back? We're like, all right, but just like you gotta sign up for it because it's really about keeping your mind sharp. Honestly, it's not about the physical element. The most accomplished runner that I'm friends with, probably besides you, would be my buddy Jason. And Jason, he was like, "How are you feeling?" And I was like, "Well, we're doing this as a group run, so it's different, right? It's not about speed." And I was like, "I feel like, and me and Joe are looking at this as a team. I was like, I feel like Joe is very durable, and I feel like my fitness is very, very high right now. So I feel good." And he goes, "Oh, it's way more about fitness and physical." And I just started laughing. I was like, "You're right." He's like, because he was like, "What are you going to eat out there? Like you're going across a desert. Like, talk to me about your water, your hydration. Like," and he's like, where's your mind? Like, have you been able to be calm lately? Like, test yourself a little. And it was just funny. It was just funny thinking about because me and someone wanted to start a training company years ago called 8 Weeks Out, making sure that at all times you're physically and mentally and emotionally prepared to be 8 weeks out from any big adventure.
Yeah, I think the ready state is something that we work towards. That I think there's some things that are completely within the expectation and control system. If you're going to run 3 miles, probably little will happen. If you're going to get out and do 75 miles, there's a lot of variables that we're not controlling for. And so that is where a bit of the experience and the mindset play in. Sure, I think if we were professional runners, ultra runners, we would have had a different approach. But this is, I think, Sean, as we do this more and more and think about this journey and the different stage that you and I are both at, it's, I don't want to like always feel like we're talking ourselves into that we're trying to live a healthier, more productive life, one that has elements of happiness and challenge and feels worthwhile. That changes the dynamics of why we do any of these things. I mean, we all could hang out with, and we know them, people who are on it from like, okay, I am going to try and do a personal best. I'm going to try and break our record. I'm trying to win a race. That is one time in our lives we might do that. The rest of our life, We want to create this full and rich experience, right? That makes us show up better, that makes us feel good about our time here. We try not to maybe figure out the true meaning of life, but we can certainly experience it deeply when we put ourselves into these situations. You're muted.
I think you're really getting to something is getting to the bottom of this, right? Because again, I'm really recently coming off of spending 6 days with my buddy Jason, who we run a lot with. So naturally, we are running a lot, talking a lot about why we're doing what we're doing. And I don't want to say it's not for the physical, but it's not. That's one piece of it. But like I think we'd all agree, like running 75 miles is probably not the healthiest thing we could do for ourselves, right? There are healthy elements to it. I know you've talked about the fact that like from a cardiovascular standpoint, there's almost no limit to zone 1 and 2 where we'll be staying. But there's other potential harmful factors. I think if we were optimizing purely for the physical, we would not be doing that. That's
Right.
I guess what I would say. But it gives me I feel as if putting myself in these tough positions gives me transferable skills in life. It and it gives me pure experience. So Peter Attia talks about how he believes that happiness comes from velocity. So you're sitting on a plane in the air going 580 miles an hour. You don't feel like you're going 1 mile an hour. But when you take off, you're going from 0 to 100. Everyone like sits back in their seat and you feel it. And that's kind of like what he was talking about with like endurance racing. He's a swimmer. He was talking about like when you get to that finish line, like that velocity, like what you feel at the end there is just so strong and powerful. And there's something there. Like there's a point of the run where I start to feel like I'm just practicing being in the moment, right? There's so much pain going on that I'm practicing being in the moment. So I'm building that transferable skill set. And then like as you come to the end, you finish. And really it's not like the finish in my mind, it's like the time after. It's like
Mm.
the reflecting on it, whatever. Like that, it just brings me like so much joy and like really like lasting joy and peace and like a quiet mind, honestly. I feel like it's like manufacturing a quiet mind. And I've been really trying to go more off of feelings, like than like critical thinking. And it's something that I like when I get outside. I love these runs and these adventures. They're stories, they're memories, they're things to learn from. And really the lifestyle that we have to live to train there. Like neither one of us, Joe, are gonna show up wildly unprepared for an event like
Yep.
this. I'm not gonna say we're gonna be exactly prepared, but maybe we'll be somewhat prepared. So what does that mean? That means 6 days a week we're waking up, getting outside, running, and we both love being outside and running, moving our body. So it's like signing up for this goal basically says, hey, the 3 months before it are going to be great. Every day I'm going to get an hour or two to myself outside. And that's to me
Right.
like one of the reasons that I like to do it. It's like you're almost just guaranteeing a good chunk of the year.
Yeah, I think that this idea of which I don't know, sometimes I feel like we talk about it a lot, and then yet this lived experience is not lived enough by anyone, which is to say that you have an opportunity to feel things differently, to grow and develop, to test yourself. These, to your point, are life skills, right? They are going to help you be prepared for work, personal relationships, other sort of unexpected moments in one's life, and the resilience that you
Mm-hmm.
build by continuing to leverage the system to your advantage because you've been there is really the one of the secrets to why I've sat in enough board meetings, Sean, and one board meeting, a board member after said to me, "You're just too calm in these meetings." I said, "Well, let's not confuse calmness and intensity, please. Like, calm means I'm managing my emotions. Intensity means I show up with all the power that I have." And I think that that's key. But the only way you can develop that is to have put yourself in intense situations and realize that if you're not calm, you're spending energy that's not giving you a return. And you actually want to put all the energy into the outcome, not the surrounding emotions. And I think that's all of what this journey is about and why we want to go out and give this thing a shot.
I I'm thinking about that. I recently was just listening to a book by Ryan Holiday, like a Stoic book, and you just said it, I think, better than him. So kudos to you, because he studies this. But he talks about that, like he talks about like anger is like a useless emotion. It's like he's not saying don't feel it, but you can feel it and then transform that into productivity, or
Yep.
you transform that into whatever. And yeah, I love that, because it's like being calm is basically like we all have limited like time, energy, and if you're able to manage that, you're able to redirect it and use it in other spots. So I really
Yeah, I think
appreciate
that,
that.
well, when you see, like, there are good examples of this, right? Think about the quarterback in football and the
Yeah.
pros. Right? They're standing there for 3 or 4 seconds. These very large people are running at them, wanting to knock them over. And if you're not calm in that situation, you can't really do your job, right? You have to really understand that your focus is not, it doesn't matter, like, if they're running at you or not, you still have to do the same thing. And if you can keep that blocked out, same thing with a golfer, shows up on the 18th hole of the Masters, if they can calm the nerves and block out the noise that's around me. I said that's what Jack Nicklaus did the best. And you go through example after example and see people who show up the best. It's that they got control of the emotion. They actually push it to the performance side, right? Not the distraction side. And I think, but the only way to get there is to practice that. There isn't, that's not intuitive, right? Because the cortisol in our system naturally is a flight or fight kind of circumstance. And so we initially turn on the cortisol fast. And you're like, oh my God, watch out.
Yeah.
And then you have to say, okay, but there wasn't any real risk. And so then I need to find a way to actually close that system down and turn it off. It's good for heightened awareness, but it isn't good for panic. And but this is practiced, and our system can adapt to that. And it's one of these that I always just feel like if you want to get good at something, practice it. And so that would mean put yourself in that circumstance, then you learn and you see what works.
It, I completely agree with you.
Hey guys, Joe Gagnon, host of the Chasing Tomorrow podcast, and this episode is brought to you by OneUp Health. OneUp Health is a modern cloud data and interoperability platform that makes it easy to acquire, store, and share data between payers, providers, and patients. I hope you enjoy the episode.
David Goggins, his saying is, "There's always a shitstorm coming."
Yeah.
That's what
Hmm.
he says in his book, and he's like, "I don't care who you are. Like, you're gonna have someone in your family pass away. You're gonna lose your job. You're gonna get in an emotional rut. You're gonna have all the success in the world, and then say, oh wait, money's not what I wanted,' and have a wake up call. Something's coming, and you need to prepare for it." And he goes, "It's coming to everyone. It doesn't matter your status, anything." I've actually really taken that to heart. I wrote one of the chapters in my book is called Practice. And it's funny because we LeBron James would never show up to an NBA finals without practicing with his team. Like that would
Yep.
just never ever happen. So like why do we think that we can get a bad night's sleep, wake up to a early work call that gets us starting work at 5 a.m., work till 6 p.m., rush home in traffic, and then when your kid starts acting up, be able to manage your stress in that moment without have ever practicing managing a high level of stress. But I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's almost foolish. And this whole idea of like doing hard things that I know you subscribe to and are teaching me the ways, I really think that's like some of those transferable skills. Like I think stress management and emotional management is one of the biggest things that we are practicing.
Yeah. I think the thing, Sean, is actually, I think about this a lot. What power you have that you don't turn on. So, one of the powers that we have is the ability to test ourselves in whatever circumstance we want. This is an example. We didn't need any permission or even to sign up for a race to go out with the idea we're going to go to Joshua Tree and do 75 miles. But whatever the circumstance, all of us can put ourselves in these challenging situations to learn how to react. And you can do that in very simple ways every day. Construct a situation that is a little bit harder than you might want to do. Like even getting up a little bit earlier, right? Could be something that is a challenge. And so I think that every time we do that, we get this agency strengthened within ourselves, which then what like I don't know, a lot of people don't like to get in front of people on stage, but like if you do and you practice that, you get
Yeah.
better at it and it makes you sort of have the feeling like, wow, I want to be on stage because I want to experience that. So I think that what is the unknown is how you're gonna feel afterwards until you've done it. But boy, once you do, then you, like, start to realize, like, "Oh, I have to do this more often." Back to your practices comment that,
Yeah.
we don't need permission to go practice, so we might as well because we get a big return out of that.
Yeah. It's just I've been trying to think about the other side of that coin. I always try to because I live by that, right? So it's like, okay, what if I'm wrong, right? And I'm trying to think of like what the argument would be. So I'd love to play a game with you and see if we can think about like if we were trying to, I don't know, either play devil's advocate or prove that wrong. Do, do you see, do any arguments come to mind for why that wouldn't be the case? Because I think if we're, it's a big thing that we're saying, and we both tested it and believe in it and love it. But what would the argument be for the other side?
Well, I think that the argument most people would give is that we don't understand the subtleties of their life and the time demands and the other demands, and so they don't really have the time to practice. And so the
Just sounds
outcome
like that's
there
one.
is maybe they're trying to show up differently for what they're already responsible for. So I imagine that that could be
Mm-hmm.
maybe at a point in time, but we can sort of eke out every once in a while if we want just put your phone down and don't be distracted and show up for 3 minutes and try and do something. Like, change your nighttime routine and do something for 3 minutes that would still fit, right? I think it's maybe in the magnitude, there's a good reason not to, but in the micro element of it, there's always a good reason to keep ourselves accountable to improvement. Because the better I do think that what happens, Sean, over time, and you'll hopefully find this like I did, the better you show up, the better everything around you works. Your relationships, your work, family, everything. And when Sean shows up, and so, but for you to show up well, you have to do more than just show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to do something to show up as your best. And I think that so, yes, there are some practical limitations to how much, but I don't think there's a good argument against nothing.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, even if you look at someone like a monk or something like that, that's like renouncing quite a lot of desire, they're still living in strict discipline. You could
Yep.
say more, right? Think about one of my friends, Kieran, who our values and the way we look at life are very, very similar, and we take a very opposite approach. It's funny. He's big into health and fitness. We were at a bachelor party this weekend in New Orleans, and I was ordering salads and drinking water and staying away from things, and crushing beers and smoking a cigar. And it's funny because he's very in shape, really in tune with his health. And I was like, Kieran, like what? I was like, what are you doing? Like, I just kind of thought like you're past it. And he was like, I don't know, man. I'm a man of pleasure. And he was like, I like to do things that just make me feel good in the moment and have like no regret around it or guilt around it. And it's funny because I think that's an easy thing for people to say that do indulge. But I mean, he's been a good friend of mine for 20 years. We've had deep talks. We've had adverse like moments with a lot of adversity. Like I've peeled back the layers on him, and I think to his core he's one of the happiest people I've ever met, and like does not like to face adversity. And I almost like want to like continue to like I mean I do continue to like talk and study him because it's funny. It's just it's a very very different approach at the same thing. And I guess I'm probably exaggerating a little because he does exercise like once a day, right? But he always says he's like I do the minimal to stay in good shape, right? He boxes 3 times a week, lifts 4 days a week. So he every day just does 30 to 60 minutes of exercise. And if he doesn't feel like it, he skips. If he skips a whole week, he doesn't care.
Yep.
Never wants to do something like outrageously challenging at all. Like he every time I tell him something, he's like cracks up about it. Even like an ice bath or something, he's like, "Why would I want to do that?" But it's
Yeah, there's no judgment in that, right? Of course, neither you or I are here to judge anyone. The life choices that people make are their choices. I think that we will have a much higher degree of understanding of the implications of what we do as life goes on. You'll
yep,
probably know Sean more than I ever were able to know because of the way we'll be able to measure that. And I think the question isn't, is that okay now? Sure, it's fine. I think that you can, as long as we're responsible, didn't get in the car afterwards, and we do that, that's okay. But there are implications to it longer term in terms of how one uses or manages all of that. And you don't even have to become an athlete. You just want to be a healthier person. What we know, and this is not your buddy necessarily, but 85 million people in the United States have type 2 diabetes because they made lifestyle choices, and no one wants to really end up in that situation. So I think there is a point where we have to balance what the implications of what we do, but that's up to us. You know, have the freedom to choose. But the more we know, the higher the probability we can make decisions that are probably long term beneficial
yep.
rather than the short term. I also just want this is you and me talking. So uh, we actually get a lot of pleasure out of this other stuff. When someone says they can only get pleasure out of a beer and a hamburger, I don't think they fully understand that there are other ways to get deep level of pleasure from the activities that we take on. So,
Yeah.
hey, I think we're on our own sort of human campaign for one version of life, which we think would be great for others to try.
And it's funny. You're familiar with Dean Karnazes?
Oh yeah.
I got introduced to him over the phone maybe like 2 years ago, and I just had the chance to have a nice chat with him, and it was really fun. And I was talking to him about like, hey, like I heard a rumor that you've been running every day for 40 years and you've never been injured. And he's like, yeah, it's because I don't take days off. I don't even sit much. He has a 5 to 10 minute workout of push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, and air squats that he does 10 times throughout the day, and he doesn't believe it's about like working hard. He thinks it's about just like his body is always in motion.
Yep.
And then he doesn't have cheat meals. And when we talked about this, he goes, it's funny because he said, I look at something like a cupcake like I do a tennis ball. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, it's not something I eat. Like, it's not like, oh, I wish I could eat that, but I have the discipline not to. He goes, it's just
Yeah.
not food. It's not food. And I thought that was really interesting because like he has completely dissociated his happiness from a lot of material things, right? Like his happiness comes from his like him, not like him and his actions, not what he's putting into himself. And I really do think there's something there. It's almost like the monk approach of like, you know, what you can say about like a monk is like they're in control. If you have to have a hamburger to be happy, then you're not unconditionally happy. Like you're happy because you have a desire that's met. I always play around with that because life I do think we're like here to have a human experience, but I also think it's like I look at everything as an opportunity to like be like training. Like if you just eat something boring, basic, healthy, you're basically telling your subconscious, I don't need anything to be happy, right? Like
Yeah, I mean,
this.
but they're right. Happiness is intrinsic, right? That's I think people don't understand. It means you that is the decision you make to be happy or not. And so you can always be if you want. And the the trigger which says that this has to happen for me to be happy is missing the core point of that emotion. And but we both know that look, I think that if we look at our old normal curve, right, there's people who live out in the five sigma world who are very different than the mean. I think we want to just stay to the right of the mean, which means that we're more performant than not, that we're leaning in a little bit more deeply to life, that we're not trying to maybe we become extreme and a tennis ball and a cupcake are equal. But maybe instead we're just capable of, as we go along on this journey, showing up the best version of ourselves that we possibly can in a respectful way, supporting each other, the community, our family, and being happy and enjoying it. I think that there is a place that we can all find that, but we got
Yeah.
to lean in, right? And that's
It,
what this podcast is about. Our discussions are about pushing on the edges of that envelope to see where it still was productive and constructive to how we want to live and show up. And so I think we'll
yeah.
probably leave it there, Sean, and try and save a little bit more for you and me to talk about next time. Uh, we will have a report from Joshua Tree before and after. We'll let you all in on what it feels like, and maybe even have some recordings while we're going along. So
I was gonna say we could. I think we have some mics to set up we could do a midnight podcast recording.
I got I got my backpack full of stuff, Sean. I got my GoPro, I got my microphones, I got my
Oh, I love
lights. I feel like I'm going on an adventure to the moon with how much I brought with me. So I
it.
look forward to seeing you out in Joshua Tree in a few days here. And hey, thanks for spending a few minutes. This is always fun. The Chasing Tomorrow crew loves listening to Sean and these dialogues. So thanks.
Joe, thank you so much. I appreciate you always. You always make the time. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks.